My name is Justin DeVore, and today's webinar will be going through a complete workflow from getting the drone up into the air and then all the way through and into Civil 3D. Many of you on the call may have a workflow of your own, or maybe you're just starting out and looking to add this to your business. So really today, I'm hoping to speak to everybody, so if you do have a lot of experience, maybe there's a little thing you might learn here that you could start implementing, or if you're brand new to it, hopefully it'll be a nice overview to be able to get a full understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. So with that being said, a little bit about me. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Justin DeVore, and I'm a senior reality capture specialist here with ATG. And I am based out of our Phoenix office. I've been with ATG over 5 years now and have been around the civil industry ever since college. You can read through the rest, but as I was putting this slide together, I noticed that my picture was out of date, so need to get a new one there. But I basically kind of gave up on the little bit of hair I had left, picked that off and grew out what hair I could on my face. So what we'll be covering today, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing the drones in a full civil complete workflow. Some of the learning objectives hope to accomplish. We're going to learn a little bit about photogrammetry workflow. I do have a webinar coming up in July 21st, I think it is, where we'll kind of dive more into the science behind photogrammetry and LiDAR scanning and things like that. So this will be kind of more of a, we'll touch base on it a little bit, and feel free to ask questions throughout. It is just going to be me on here, so I'll monitor questions while we can, but we'll definitely get to them at the end. So yeah, about photogrammetry, we'll also discover and utilize Infraworks. It's still a program not a lot of us are using, and if you are, good on you. And then we'll kind of showcase how that can all be brought into Civil 3D as well. So again, our workflow today, we're going to go through the flight planning process, and then we'll go through and take a look at what the drone point cloud processing looks like. Then we'll bring it into Infraworks and then into Civil 3D. Okay, so let's go and dive into it. So basically, first things first, when I go to think about planning out a site. So I'll ask myself a handful of questions. What will be the data be used for, whether we're just using it for inspection purposes, or if we're looking to do site plan grading out of it, things like that. Are we looking for Ortho Mosaic imagery? Again, 3D data, what are the potential hazards or risks in the area? And what's the designated airspace? And will we need permission to be able to fly? All right, and then we're gonna kind of switch over off of PowerPoint here and kind of do everything live in a little live demo. So again, what we'll be doing is we'll be processing. We'll take a look at some of the photos captured from the drone, and then I'm going to be showcasing site scan pretty heavily. There's a lot of drone processing softwares out there, site scan being one of them. They're teamed up with Pix4D. There's also drone deploy, data mapper, recap photo, all those kinds of things can process your drone data. So we'll be diving into site scan, and I'll show you some of the features with that, but just kind of keep in mind that's not the only location where you can process your drone data. And then we'll jump into Infraworks. We'll showcase how to some of the terrain cleanup tools and some of the point cloud themes that we can assign. And what's really cool about those is those will translate over right into Civil 3D. And we'll show some differences of just going straight from drone process data and straight into Civil 3D, or go through Infraworks and show you some of the differences there. So let's go ahead and jump out of that. Okay. So first things first, we'll go ahead and we'll start flight planning. So as you can see here, I have site scan open. It's just internet base. So I can log in pretty much anywhere that I have an internet connection and be able to check in on any of the flights I've done and things like that. So you can see that they're populated throughout here. But we'll go ahead and check out this site over here in Hawaii and do a flight plan over here. So first thing I'll do is I'll check a whole bunch of different sites to find out if and where we can fly. So one place I'd recommend going to is airmap.com. And what's great about this is they have it broken down specifically for us pilots for drones. They've broken down those big aviator maps to be able to showcase, you know, here's the Hilo airport. And right around the airport, we see that we have a no-fly zone. And then really close to there, we see that it starts gradually going up. And these are basically it's part of the Lance thing, but basically we'll have 100-foot ceiling available to us if we want to submit to be able to fly in that area. So the area we're going to be going is around here, so I don't see any issues here, and we'll go ahead and go back into site scan and start planning. So I'm going to go into the project. Okay. And over here, we'll take a look at this real quick. So we saw the home page. Now I'm in the projects, and we got this ATG Huhona. And we can see that I have a flight processed already, but we'll go and jump into flight plans. So we don't have any yet, so I'm going to go ahead and do a new flight plan. Okay. All right, kind of zoom in on the area. This is the area in question, so we'll go ahead and hit next here. And it's going to go ahead and generate a generic flight plan for us. So I'll go and kind of drag this around to the extents of the site that I want to capture. So I want to make sure to get roadway information, as that's going to be important there, and so forth. So we'll kind of make some adjustments here. So what's great about this is I don't have to, I can go ahead and pre-plan this out and basically understand how long the flight's going to take to be able to do this all from the office before getting out in the field. Here in the settings, I can go ahead and adjust my altitude. So if I wanted to fly at 400 feet, you can see that the grid and the flight path automatically changes to be able to match these overlap. I have a 70%, 65% overlap set in here, but we'll go and keep that at 200. That'll give us a lot of information. And then you can also select your camera model and where you want to start and so forth. So once we save this flight plan, then I can basically download it onto my iPad, connect my drone to that, and basically hit go. I don't have to recreate the flight plan there on site. I've already done that here. So we'll go and save this one for now. We'll call this, area survey 200 feet. That'll work. And then if we wanted to make another one, maybe like a 3D flight, we'll go and do that here. So we'll do a crosshatch survey. Select that, hit next. So you see the pattern changed. It's doing kind of a back and forth motion. And let me go and adjust this a little bit. We can see that we have our angle has changed on the gimbal. So basically the camera is going to be tilting as it's flying these routes to be able to hit it. This is ideal when we have a lot of ground change and or buildings on site. So having an angle is going to be able to hit that building basically below the roof line to be able to get that information versus a top-down nadir flight. So we'll go and set up 2 flights in there. Okay, that'll work for now. And we'll say it's our Phantom 4. And we'll go and save that flight. Okay, so crosshatch survey, again at 200 feet. We'll go and save those flight plans. So again, now that those are saved, let me, I was gonna jump into the iPad, but I think we'll save that. We may come back into that. Actually, let's go and give it a shot. So I just need the meeting ID. Got a question here from Clint. What drone are you using? We have a couple within our fleet. We have a DJI Matrice 210. That's pretty nice. It's big and beefy, so it handles windy conditions really well. And it has detachable cameras, so we can swap those out if needed. And it's also front mounted camera. So if we needed to fly underneath a bridge, we could do that. Basically turn the camera up. Whereas we also have a couple Phantom 4s that we fly, one with an RTK unit and one just the regular Phantom 4 Pro. But those have undermounted cameras. So if they were to point straight up, they'd just be looking at the bottom of the drone versus underneath the bridge. So I hope that answered that question. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question. Okay, all right. Yeah, so let's we'll kind of walk through that. I'm looking for that meeting ID, but I don't see it here. So on the basically what we'll do is, I guess we'll kind of talk through it. So when I'm out on site, I'll go ahead and download, maybe I'll pre-download that, that flight plan to my iPad, and then I'll go ahead and execute the flight there on site. And then that'll be signed, and that I'll sign into SiteScan on the iPad, run that flight, and then I'll download all those photos, and then I'll come back and upload them back into SiteScan here. So to do that, basically I'll go to flights here and add a new flight. So I'll go new flight here, and we'll just say webinar. And I'll get the date right this time. Okay, hit next. Okay, so now I can upload photos, have them automatically processed. Let's go ahead and, this wasn't the same site. This was a different one I've done recently, but let's go and take a look at one of these photos. Okay, so we can see that this is a nadir flight. Basically, the camera's pointing straight down, not at an angle. Okay, and then you can see as it's going through that overlap, that 70% overlap that we were hitting, and then the side overlap. So as we go through, we'll kind of see that go through. Okay, so we'll go and close that. So we'll go and select all these, grab those. Okay, so those are going to upload. Basically, I'm going to go and back out of this because we don't want to be conscious of everybody's time, and we don't need to watch all those go through. Okay, so that's how you create a new flight. And basically when it's done processing, you'll get a green check mark here saying that it's ready to go. Okay, so we'll take a look at one. Sorry if that was a little fast, but here in flights, we got a Huhona that's done and processed. Okay, a couple of things I can do here. I can merge it with another flight. Say if I have a 3D, do that 3D one as well. I could combine those and reprocess this. Or I could export that flight data right now, or take a look at the details. Okay, so now we see if I turn off the Ortho Mosaic, so this was our flight plan. This particular site, they had constructed a substation, and we're looking to get as-built of their new construction. So we had flown it for them. So here you can see the Ortho Mosaic turning on and off. That's all stitched together. If we turn on the photos, you can see that similar grid that we had, that back and forth to be able to do that. And then if we highlight one of these circles, this is just the photo that it took. It's actually at a higher resolution, but for the purposes of viewing it quickly, it dumbs it down a little bit to be able to see that. So we can highlight, take a look at some of these photos. And if needed, you know, say for inspection purposes or whatever the case may be, you can always just download these independently as well to be able to take a look at them. Okay. So we have all those flights and all those photos in here. A couple things that we can look at over here. If I go to elevation data, I can turn on and off my contours. So let's go and set it at 1 and 5. That'll work. And then we'll see that it's generating the contours for us. We'll let that load. 1 and 5 might have been ambitious for a webinar. Let's go and jump that up to 5 and 10. No, we'll leave that. So we can turn those on and off, also like an elevation model, so we can take a look at how the site's flowing. So what's really neat about this is I can invite my clients, my engineers, my surveyors, you know, whoever needs to see this, I can just go ahead down here and invite them to the project just via email, and they don't have to download anything. I don't have to load up a point cloud onto a thumb drive and email it over to them. All they have to do is just sign into the internet and be able to take a look at what they wanted. So maybe a water resources engineer wants to take a look at if we have any ponding. So they can quickly kind of go through here and do some quick adjustments to be able to see if, okay, looks like our site is high and we're not going to get any ponding, which is good in this location because it's substation and you wouldn't want water ponding around electricity. That wouldn't be good. Okay. Also cut and fill. Right now it's defaulted to the right down in the middle, but we can change the opacity of this. We can change if we want it higher or lower, those kinds of things. So cut and fills in here. It could be a level plane. Also, we can add other flights here as well. I don't have any other flights to show on this particular site. But if we say we were doing a construction progress report and we flew it every Friday, we could see how much cut and or fill is being going on throughout the site, be able to keep track of that, okay? Or another file. We can upload PDFs, we can upload CAD drawings, those kinds of things. And just being able, again, to see all this on the internet is pretty powerful, okay? And then also Hillshade if you want to take a look at it that way. Okay, before we look at some more of the data, we'll jump over here to the point cloud. Okay, so here I can adjust my point budget. Basically, it's showing how many points that I'll see and what size I can adjust this. So we'll kind of let this filter in. We'll see the 3D data. Again, I'm not using Recap or Civil 3D or anything. I'm just using an internet browser to be able to view this right now. Okay. And while this is kind of loading, let's go ahead and take a measurement of this power pole. I'm curious how tall it ended up. So over here on the right, we have a couple different things. We can do like a marker tool, you know, if you want to just kind of do a quick check of, you know, X, Y, and Z in this area to be able to attach that, or check an angle, or let's do this height tool. So curious, we'll grab the bottom of this and grab the top of that. Okay, we'll rotate around. And if I were to drag out this point here, we can see it's still giving me the height, but I'm making sure that I'm grabbing the ground over here versus I might have been on top of a plant or something like that. So that's a pretty neat feature there to be able to rotate around there. Okay. We can also just do distances and areas, which will be nice. So let's go and grab the, oops, I zoomed in. So we'll go and grab this area here. And we see it's constantly updating us with our square footage and the lines, okay? And over here, I can turn these markers on and off as needed, okay? Same thing with the areas. And points. Oh yeah, let's, we'll go into the inspect tool. So if we go into inspect, say I wanna get a little more information on this over here. Oops, let me pan over. So if I select that point, what it's gonna do is load all the photos that it thinks that this point is in. So if we take a look and expand, say this one, we can see, okay, it highlighted that area, and then now we can go get a closer image of that to be able to see, truly see what's going on over here. Okay, whether it's some lettering or something that we might have needed to see versus this point cloud here. Okay, and then there's also an elevation tool, or sorry, like a profile. So we'll kind of cut through this building. Okay, and we'll go and close that out. All right, so I can rotate around and be able to make adjustments to my profile, and then this will update accordingly. So you can see down here, I'm kind of highlighting, and you see on the marker up top, sorry, I was pointing at my screen. But if you look at the dot following along up top, you can see where it's at on there. So again, this is pretty neat. We can export all of these. You can export CSV or even LAS that way as well. So a lot of neat features. Again, this is all before we've downloaded that data. We can just look at it on the internet here. Okay. So we'll go out of this. Make sure I covered all these tools. Looks like it did. Okay. And let's see. So we'll switch projects real quick. What I'll do is go to oh yeah, vertical construction. Okay, so this has multiple flights, and we see multiple dates on here. This was actually one that 3DR had done and shared it with us so that I can kind of showcase this. This is a construction project. So one thing here, we can add ground control as well. So we can take a look at, review the ground control points here. You see that they were tagged and labeled. So this number 1, top left P on stop on road left of building. So very detailed information. Go back and forth, you know, where the basically survey notes compare into there. And then here's all the photos attached with it. Select a GC. Oops. Okay, so when we select a GCP, you can see where they were highlighting that. Okay, so now we can upload that CSV file directly here into SiteScan, and then have it adjust and make those changes here and into process. Okay, so those are some GCPs. Now let's go into this timeline feature. So what I can do here, I mentioned you can do multiple flights. So we can set, say like this date, and sure, we'll keep this one the same. So over here, we have this they have this little slider tool where we can go back and forth to be able to see that. And it doesn't have to just be flights either. We can upload our PDF drawings. So if you have something in there and you're curious to see if they're following the plan or the site layout, or if they've had to make a change, you'll be able to see that accordingly. Also, one customer had mentioned, so they had flown a site like this, and we shared this project with pretty much everybody that was involved. And one of the construction managers on site noticed that he was getting billed for too many trash cans, and it wasn't on this particular site, but basically they were being overcharged for so many trash cans. And what he did was upload the different dates to be able to show that and be like, yeah, I only have 4 on site, not 6 like you're invoicing me for. So they ended up saving a lot of money. And that was just, you know, we had flown it for a particular reason, but it was used for another. So that was a neat little story there. Grab some water. Okay, so let's go back to the flight. Okay, and we can take a look at the photos. Again, this was more of a nadir flight, so it goes back and forth there. And again, we have all the same things. We can take a look at contours and elevation, so forth. Okay. All right, let's go back to our project. So we'll go back, hold on. Okay, so now after everything's processed and we'll grab the information, now I want to bring this ultimately into Civil 3D. So after it's done processed down here, again, we can add overlays, we can add more photos to this flight if we happen to need those, add ground control points. We'll go and take a look at that really quick. I don't have a CSV file to add right now, but you can do a text file, CSV file, or really any kind of XYZ point coordinates. We can import those. And then meters, standard foot, or US survey foot. Also, if you have a known coordinate system, or if you have a local control, you can add that as well. Okay. And then down here, we have an export button. So we can hit export. We have a handful of things we can export. So we have this Ortho Mosaic TIFF image, okay? So if you want to put that, say, on your cover sheet, to be able to do that, you can download that here. I guess I don't need to download everything. I have it all downloaded, but we can also do the DEMs and DTMs, contour shape files, okay? Point cloud, LAS and LAZ file formats. And then also they have this pavement inspection shape file, and then also processing report and things like that. So we'll take a look at this processing report before we download the data. Okay, so again, I mentioned that Pix4D and SiteScan have teamed up together. So this is a Pix4D report. If any of you have run Pix4D on the desktop or in the cloud version, this may look familiar to you. So we see the project, we see the average GSD, ground sampling distance, how many images were used, previews, and then basically the flight paths where it took photos and so forth. So this is just indicating how much overlap. So green's very good. That means that we have five or more photos in that area. That's going to help improve the accuracy. Whereas the edge of the site, you notice it starts going yellow and red. So one thing I will note when you're looking at doing a site, you'll want to extend your boundary beyond the site limits because you wouldn't want bad data right on the edge of your site. So it's best to overfly it by a little bit to make sure that we have plenty of overlap with the photos. Okay, and then it just goes through all this information here. Okay. All right, so that's the report. We can also download the photos separately. So if you want to compare, say I was to invite, client or civil engineer A or so forth, I can invite them to this project and then they can download the photos themselves and run it through their own drone software if needed. But we'll go ahead and download the point cloud file. I've already pre-downloaded it, so we don't have to sit and watch that, but we'll take a look at that. I see a whole bunch of we'll go to some of these questions I see here. All right, so Jeremy's saying, do you fly all surveys with RTK drone, or are you able to get accurate information with the regular Phantom 4? So yes, we've done a handful of flights with RTK, which is great about that because you can just sign in to one of those stations to be able to get that information. But you can get extremely accurate without using the RTK. And part of that is what we had ran through with the ground control points. So we can have a local surveyor go out and survey some control and checkpoints for us, give us that CSV file, and then we can upload that. And then when we have that in there, when it does the processing of all the photos, it's going to make little tweaks and adjustments to make that more accurate based on our survey control. And then Jeff is asking, what about an obstacle to avoid, such as a tower in a flight area? So some of the later drones have obstacle avoidance built into them. Like our Phantom 4 Pro, that'll that'll start beeping when it notices an object within 15 to 20 feet. And it'll start beeping on the controller, get my attention. And then on the controller, you can have different settings of override. So I could override and manually fly. If I'm, say, flying under a bridge, I might be getting a lot of information there. Or I can have it say like, yeah, just anytime it sees something like that, pause the flight so that the drone pilot can make adjustments. You know, say on this particular site that we're looking at here, you notice that we had a lot of power lines and things like that. So if we were flying too low, we could make that adjustment if that was beeping there. Site scan cost, I actually don't know the price right now. I know they, so they have like annual subscriptions, and I believe they have like monthly subscriptions as well. And it depends on how many seats in there, but we can definitely get to that. Or you can reach out to your account rep. They have all the sales sheet information in front of them. And then Jeremy asks, what resources or training would you recommend to someone who's just beginning to learn about drone surveying? Well, this webinar is a great one to be able to get the overview of it. We do offer a 2-day drone course, basically, and it's one I've taught a couple times. Basically, kind of go through all the FAA regulations, and it's really all about safety, right? So we'll kind of go through everything through weather, through how to check airport regulations and everything like that. So to be able to get your drone pilot license. So that's one. If you don't have pilot on staff, you can get some pilots there. And then also, we could even do different custom trainings as well. Say like if you have a specific workflow, like I've done this a couple times where I've just worked with surveyors, and they were looking to survey large sites with, say, like a fixed wing drone. So they had a different workflow than maybe something that kind of like what we're looking at here, more of a site plan type thing. So yeah, just kind of go into training, and then also what software you want to use. Obviously, I'm showcasing SiteScan here, but we can also showcase Recap Photo and do training on that kind of thing, and really just educate you on what the advantages and disadvantages for each type are, so that you can be best informed when it comes to that decision. All right, and then is AirMap free, or what's the fee for that? So AirMap is free. I just have to sign in to be able to view it. But the sign in doesn't, it doesn't cost anything to be able to do that. So actually we'll just go and pull that up here. Map.io. Okay, so when you first get to airmap.io or .com, it'll go through here, but I'll go and hit plan a flight. Oh, it's already jumped into here, but basically it'll go through and have you hit accept to be able to do that. One neat thing about AirMap. All right, so what I really like about AirMap, you see all these little paper airplanes. Those are flights currently going on today with drones. Basically, like it just popped up on the radar and it gives the coordinates, and then we see that it was flown on June 16th at 10:36 a.m. So you could, no username was provided, but you could sign in and just say like, hey, yeah, that was me, you know. But you can see there's a lot of drone activity, even out in Hawaii, where we're planning our flight out there in Kona. So again, I like this one, and really it's just impressive to see, because like 3-5 years ago, we didn't see this kind of activity. You know, there were just a handful of people doing it. Now everybody is getting involved. So let's see. Okay, and then Jeff asks, if you were to interrupt a flight scan or helicopter comes into an area, if you have to start over the scan, or how will that software pick up where you left off? Yeah, great question. So basically, as it's going through the flight, maybe I can describe this with a little bit of visual aid. Let's go back to our flight plan. Okay, so basically, let's just say it's starting down here and it's starting to go across, and it's going across this flight. You notice a helicopter. Again, helicopters, they are hard to track via radio frequency. They don't always announce where what their intentions are, whereas other manned aircraft will. So in the case of helicopters, the best thing to do is take it down immediately, right? Manned air traffic always has the right of way when it comes to that. So on your flight record, so basically it's taken photos all along the way on this path. If we hit pause or even end flight and then land it really quickly and then get it back up again, you can hit a resume flight plan. So like, I'll give one example with the Phantom 4 RTK unit. It comes with its own monitor. So basically like I can't plug the iPad into it. It's got to be like an RTK file. So there's a specific program logged into there. But if I hit pause, there's and then I go to resume, and same sort of thing if you're swapping out batteries, right? So if you're doing a really long flight, you may run out of batteries, so you'll pause, land it, swap out batteries, and then you go back to executing and hit resume flight. So, and then, yep, air map free, okay. So, yeah, air map is free. Again, doesn't cost anything. It's just, they do have like kind of a sign-in process, but I think I got my auto sign-in on. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the data. Yeah, go ahead and keep those questions coming in. I'll get to them when I can. But yeah, no, this would be a good thing. So again, if we're going back here, let's move these out of the way. Oops. Okay. All right, so if we go back to our flight, right? This one that we've already executed, we've already taken a look at everything. Now we want to download it, bring it into Infraworks, Civil 3D and so forth. So we'll, again, export LAS point cloud. Okay, and then over here in recap, basically what I did was file new project and import that point cloud. Okay, I'll go and cancel that because I already have it preloaded for time. We can take a look at that. So it looks just the same that we saw before, right? So now I care about, I want to start cleaning out this vegetation. Now I go over this in the YouTube video that I mentioned, but we'll kind of briefly mention it here today. So there's a couple options we can do. We can manually like rotate around and highlight. I'll just throw them on a region so we don't get, say, to be deleted. Okay. And then over here in our stack, we'll go and turn those off. Okay, so I can go through this tenuous process of cleaning up the point cloud manually, but you can imagine that's going to take a long time to do. Okay. So what I'm going to do is bring this into Infraworks and utilize the Infraworks tools here. So the reason I like to bring LAS files and point cloud data into Recap first, I consider Recap Pro being kind of the Rosetta Stone for Autodesk language. So Recap understands so many different file types. If we go import. So it understands all these different point cloud file types, whether that's RCS or FLS or FWS. I don't even know what half of these mean. We have TopCon ones here. We have LiDAR scanners. We have Leica file types, XYZ files, all that kind of stuff. So again, Recap is going to accept all that information and then convert it to that Autodesk language. Yeah, we'll go and suspend, get back into this. So it's going to translate it to an Autodesk format, and then we can bring that into Infraworks, we can bring that into Revit, we can bring that into AutoCAD, we can bring that in Civil 3D, really everything. So that's why I always recommend, if you have a point cloud, whether it be from drone or lasers or whatever, bring that into Recap first, and then bring that through. Okay. All right, so let's go and bring this into Revit. Sorry, not Revit, Infraworks. I've already pre-baked this one just in case we don't do that. So let's go to webinar and open this one. Oh, the joys of doing this live. All right, it's opening my model now. Okay, so you can see here, I have nothing in this model. Basically, I did a brand new model and just named it that, named it webinar, today's date. So nice part about Infraworks is we don't have to go find some sort of insert or type in the command on AutoCAD, like import point cloud from drone, you know, whatever the command may be. With Infraworks, I can just drag and drop that in here. So what do we name that as? All right, so just webinar. So I can grab that RCP file, okay, and then just drag that here into Infraworks. Okay, so a couple neat things about this. Grab the name, the source is a point cloud, and it already found my coordinate system. I didn't set up a coordinate system here in Infraworks, but it grabbed it from the drone data that I had, okay? And if we take a look back here and recap, we'll see that, there we go, UTM 84, okay? So let's go back over here. We'll hit close and refresh. Okay, so now we have our point cloud here in Infraworks, okay? Before we get into cleaning that up, I want to show a couple point cloud themes. That's point cloud terrain. Let's go point cloud themes. So if we do a new theme here, we can do, say, like elevation. We saw that in site scan, so I won't do that one again. One I did want to highlight is classification. So we'll just see what Infraworks thinks all this data is. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And here we go. So look, it thinks it found some ground information, found some low vegetation in this light green, some medium vegetation and high vegetation. And it threw those wires on a building layer, which, you know, not correct, but it's fine for what we can do, because we can bring this into Civil 3D now without doing anything else, and we'll have a classified point cloud, you know, versus just bringing this in. These are all just tiny little points, you know, that don't mean anything yet. But by just bringing it into Infraworks and running this classify, now we've classified our point cloud. So that's pretty cool. If we go data sources, let's actually run a terrain one now. Okay, so here on terrain, what I'm gonna do is have it do some processing tools. Now in Civil 3D, there are point cloud tools. They just haven't been touched in 7 or 8 years. So Infraworks has the latest and greatest point cloud surface tools. So if that kind of makes sense. Maybe you've run it through Civil 3D and got some good results, but it just as far as Autodesk, what they've worked on, you know, they haven't touched the the point clouds in Civil 3D in a while. So here I'm going to have it, we have a couple options between less, optimum, and more detail. We can do linear, vertical extraction, and then I can export out all points, only ground, or ground and linear points, or do not do an export at all. So I'm going to go and select only ground points, and I've already pre-baked this so we don't have to watch it spin. But if we go into recap and do a new project, we'll go and save this. Okay, so just say ground only from Infraworks cleanup. Those of you CAD managers, don't yell at me for my naming convention. Proceed, and we'll do file to import. Okay, so I have this Infraworks cleaned. Oh, ground only. Do that one. So we're just bringing that back into recap just to be able to look at it. Where did that go? Oh, sorry, point cloud derivatives. Okay, there we go. Let's go and launch. Okay, so we can see here, it did a really great job of cleaning up my point cloud for me. It got rid of pretty much everything. So like the vehicle I had parked here, it got rid of most of it. Now this I can go ahead and clean up really quick if I didn't want that to be added to my surface, right? I can just go and delete that. And then any holes here, you know, Civil 3D will just put a triangle in there for me, okay? So we can see that it did pretty well. It did kind of hang on to some of this vegetation, but again, like just being able to have this cleaned up, it did 98% of the work for me. So now I have this cleaned up bare earth surface in a matter of minutes. Whereas if we take a look at, we'll go and save this, ground only. We'll make sure that it's, yep. We'll go and remove those points. Okay, and then again, just to kind of reiterate, imagine how long it would take to be able to manually grab all this tree and be able to isolate those to be able to get down to that. So saved us, if not a full day, to be able to do that. Okay, I know we're kind of, this has gone really fast. I appreciate all the questions. So let's kind of keep moving along. So let's go and bring this into Civil 3D. So I've kind of pre-baked two different items here. So if I did Civil 3D just point cloud direct, so if I just brought it into recap and not into Infraworks, if we take a look at it, I'll just kind of switch over here. If we see I don't have anything cleaned up yet, you can do create surface from point cloud tool, and we'll select that. And you can go ahead and say like, I don't know, 1 and 5 foot contour, sure. Go next. And then over here, look at how many points it's trying to process. So that's definitely more than I make in a year. So 34 million points that it's going to go through. Now, if I try to hit create surface, I did this the other day and it took about 2 or 3 hours to do. Most of the time it's crashed, but on this bin box, it just turned through, but it took like 2 hours to go through 34 million points. So one way to go through that if we were not to use Infraworks is to do the distance between points. So this, you know, this is down past the thousands. So even if we went down to a 1/10, we can see it's down to 34, or even if we did like a foot in between, now we're kind of going this down, or even 5 foot between, depending on what we're doing. Now, if we did 5 feet, now we're down to 84,000 points that we're asking Civil 3D to do that, okay? And then it also had, like I mentioned earlier, These have been in Civil 3D since, I don't know, like 2008, 2009 Civil 3D release. They haven't updated them since, so when I run it through this, it does an okay job, just not as great as it did over here with the ground only. So that's just kind of where that came from. We'll go and cancel this because I already have the surface in here. So we'll go top, take a look, and we'll go and turn off our point cloud. Okay, so you can see the contours are pretty jagged. And if we take a look at my surface here, what is this one? Okay. If we go surface properties, and it's on my other screen, let's just go and throw on the triangles to see what's going on here. So we see these triangles going all the way across the site. Now, those of you that have worked in Civil 3D long enough know that this isn't a very good surface. To have that much information missing isn't very good. Okay, so that's classified now. And if I go up here to classification, I can do just scan colors so I can see the RGB value, or I can switch it to my classification, which showed that building layer. Remember that was in red on there. But if we just turn off building, now I have a point cloud still all in Civil 3D, but I have different layers to turn it on and off. And that's because it came through Infraworks, not something we can do if we did Civil 3D direct. Okay. Yep, and yeah, that's how to change those. And then we have the terrain data as well. Actually, let's jump back into Infraworks and take a look at that. So we have those point cloud themes. We'll go and turn that off for now. And I believe I have this pre-baked in another one. So let's go open up this model. Okay, while this is loading, are there, let's take a look at some questions. If you have any, feel free to jump in and ask. I want to be conscientious of everybody's time here. All right, so what methods, tools are available to further clean up vegetation? So there's, again, Infraworks has some great tools. There's also classification software, primarily in the building space. Gonna have to see what else is out there. I know that Pix4D Survey, which came out somewhat recently, that has some really neat features in there. May have to do a follow-up webinar just on that alone. But on the building side, like Navisworks and things like that have some like pipe identifications, things like that. So as far as what's built into Infraworks, I know it looks for cars, buildings, vegetation, those kinds of things. And okay, that hopefully that answered your question there, Brian. Okay, all right, let's take a look at model properties. We'll go and bring this. Oh, no, not model properties. Model Explorer. So I mentioned we'll go and turn off the point cloud for now. So when we ran process, that point cloud I had brought into recap, this was that there. Remember, we had to do some additional cleanup with the top of this vegetation, but this was the information brought into here. So this is that surface. And then when I bring that directly into Civil 3D, we'll have these better contours. As we can see right here, we don't, as we're zooming in, we're not getting those gaps like we were before. Oops. I zoomed way in there. Okay. And surface, we'll turn the surface back on. Let's see what else we got here in the surface layers. Feature themes. Surface layers. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. So again, that's how this surface got brought into here, and the fact that we got that there. We're right at the hour mark. So if anybody has any final questions, again, my email. Feel free to reach out to me or anybody here at ATG, and we'll make sure that get questions and or information or data sets or whatever you want to look into. But I do appreciate the time and thank you all for attending.